Thank you, Christopher. We begin our 387th year of worship as First Parish in Hingham. We begin our 341st year of worship from our old ship meeting house, if I've done the math properly. May this year of worship, whatever form it takes, wherever folks need to be and are, may our year of worship be filled with care, with compassion, kindness. May we continue on our path of growing our love, each of us and all of us together, growing our love, the better to help and to heal, the better to serve, the better to heed the call of justice. We gather in worship, as we've done for all these years, centuries, and it is good and it matters. We have begun. Our introit will be shared by Christopher. Who else?
One moment, difficulty with a file.
None of us have ever had that problem. I did neglect to mention one thing as Christopher is finding the file. And it's so important, what we've begun to do on most Sundays, which is to acknowledge just where it is that we are. Sure, we're in what we now call Hingham. I am anyway. Most of you are. But it has only been Hingham for a few centuries. We are this meeting house is on the ancestral land of the Massachusetts, Wampanoag, and Nipmuc peoples. We acknowledge that and we honor it. Christopher, how are we doing?
Not having much luck right now. My apologies.
Then we'll
we should probably move on.
Well, let us know one way or another when it works, and we will move to our lighting of the chalice. Karen Churchill is our chalice lighter this morning. Karen, what words have you for us today?
Thank you, Ken. For the new year, we light this chalice to find inner peace, love for each other, and faith in ourselves. We light this chalice to be welcoming to whomever we meet and kind to all living creatures. Gather around this light of hope as we share this time together.
In that spirit, and with those words and sentiments, I light the flaming chalice of our faith. Thank you, Karen. Our opening hymn is Morning Has Broken. A lot of folks think of it as, Cat Stevens' song. Cat Stevens covered it. It's an old Gaelic melody, and the words come from Ellen Fargion. Morning Has Broken. If you have a hymn book and need it, it's number 38 in your hymn book. Sing along, but most of you are unable to unmute yourself, which we'd love to hear your voices, but it doesn't work very well to all be unmuted and sing at the same time. But I'll sing as best I can with a little cold that I have, just as well I'm all alone in here with my cold. Morning has broken. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. I'd like to see a lot of lips moving. Just pretend, because we can't tell if you're singing the right words or not. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven. Like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where his feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden's all play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day. Well, thank you. I saw that many of you were indeed singing, and I'll bet you sounded great. Wish I could have heard you. Well, good morning. Again, welcome. Welcome to worship from our Old Ship Meeting House. Welcome to old-timers. Some of you have been coming for years, decades. Welcome to newcomers as well. If we have any newcomers among us, we're delighted to have you with us, and look forward to getting to know you as we invite you to get to know us, which you can do to begin with on our website, oldshipchurch.org. You can explore all that goes on here, get to know us that way, and in conversation. There will be a fellowship hour following the service. We will just keep the Zoom link open for whomever would like to chat, engage in conversation about the morning service, about the new year, about whatever you choose. So, as I said at the outset, here I am all alone in our meeting house in this time of Omicron, mostly recovered from a cold, but gratefully negative for COVID, in case you're wondering. PCR test. These times in which we live, as we hold in our hearts, every one of us and everyone, that we be safe and healthy wherever we are this year and always. Many thanks to Christopher, who is recovering himself, as most of you know, from COVID, for being here with us this morning. We heard him live earlier, and we hope that the screen sharing will work for additional music later on. Next Sunday, again, the service will be Zoom only, though we will have other participants in the meeting house here, Christopher, perhaps other musicians and readers. But at least for the next few weeks, we will continue in this safer of ways until this surge begins to abate. Keep paying attention to our newsletters and constant contact. So many thanks today to everyone who is, from Sharon Pren, who was in earlier with the flowers, from the Scheffler family, to everyone participating at a distance, Christopher, Karen, Jack later on, and Trish and Rich as well, for rising to the occasion. When we begin this new year, not quite as we had hoped we would, certainly looking back several months, but we begin with hope that things might be better. Hope, I don't know about you, I am moved that people, when in reading the papers or on the news, that people muster hope at the time of a new year, even this new year, maybe especially this new year. Hope doesn't get us all the way to wherever it is we wish to go. We need our hands. We need our actions as well. But without hope, we are truly then hopeless. So we begin the year, even though at a distance from one another physically, together, spiritually, very much together, multiplying hope. Two announcements before we continue. First, my class this week, as a lot of you know, the Bhagavad-Gita and the Meaning of Our Lives begins on Wednesday. We're hoping that at least the 1 o'clock session would be in person. They will both, 1 o'clock and 7 o'clock sessions, will be on Zoom. We have about 30 folks signed up. More are welcome. Send me an email if you'd like to join this class. Likewise, if you'd like to meditate together or learn to meditate, my workshop, So You Want to Meditate, is this Sunday at 3 o'clock. Again, send me an email if you'd like to be part of that. And there we are for announcements and for welcoming. We begin this year in another way with our stewardship work together in order to continue into another year, another decade, another century, and so on. Jack Gomez, who is our treasurer and chair of the Finance Committee, is here with us to say a little bit about this year's Stewardship Pledge Drive. Jack.
Thank you, Ken. Good morning, everyone. Some of you know that I have been away for several years. I was living and working in New York, and I retired in 2019, came back home. And it was earlier last year that Rich Elliott contacted me and asked me if I'd be the treasurer. I think I surprised him a little bit by saying yes fairly immediately. Because I'd actually been reflecting a bit since I came back on Old Ship, and I wanted to reconnect, and I wanted to contribute. So for my family, Elaine and I, Old Ship has been our spiritual home. We've got a number of friends here. The community and Old Ship and Ken have been witness to a number of family milestones, which have included deaths and memorial services, wedding of my daughter, hopefully a child dedication later this year, and health crisis that we really drew a lot of support and got a lot of help from the whole community, including emotional support and a lot of meals. So Old Ship has really supported our family, and we want to support as well. And I think for myself, like for many of us, we support through our time, our expertise, helping each other, but also obviously we need to support financially, and that does introduce our annual stewardship campaign. This year the campaign is being led by the Finance Committee, and we were meeting and reflecting a few weeks ago about all of the changes that Old Ship is going through. We later this year have Ken's retirement. We will have a new RE, religious education director and program, and we're finding our way with a parish house. And so we were thinking about all these changes and how they also reflect opportunities. And so we came up with the title of the theme for this year's campaign as New Horizons. So you'll hear more about that in coming weeks. We are conducting the campaign a little bit earlier this year than in prior years. And the reason that we're doing that is to be able to align our budget and our programs that we're looking to incorporate into the budget with what the community is willing to support financially. And we really want to link the two of those together. We're hoping to complete the program by mid-February. And an important aspect that we want to incorporate is communication this year. So you will continue to see in Constant Contact and newsletters updates and status of how we're progressing with the campaign. We will have at least one Zoom meeting and perhaps others as if the interest is there. To provide an opportunity for people to provide their views on our programs and on the financial condition, as well as ask questions about how we're progressing. So you will see more on that. So there will be more to come. Some of the details you will see in Constant Contact. It will include information on the programs that are being proposed. our financial goals, guidelines for pledging and giving, and some specifics of really how you precisely pledge. So you will see those details coming. So I guess with that, I say thanks to everybody for your ongoing support.
Well, thank you, Jack, so much for taking this on. Your immediate yes to Rich when it came to being treasurer, and then leading, along with others, our stewardship pledge drive. You and your family have been such an important part of our parish. The giving and receiving is always a circle. Thank you. And it's in that spirit that I've chosen for a song for all ages, not a story, that many of you know. And again, you're just going to hear me, but I hope you'll sing along. A lot of you know this, no matter your age. And I think it relates to much of what Jack has been saying. It's Malvina Reynolds' song, Magic Penny. Love is something if you give it away, you give it away, you give it away. Love is something if you give it away, you end up having more. Well, it's just like a magic penny, hold it tight and you won't have any, but lend it, spend it, and you'll have so many they'll roll all over the floor. 'Cause love is something if you give it away. I don't see any lips. I see some lips moving. Love is something if you give it away. Give it away, give it away. Love is something if you give it away, you end up having more. Well, money's dandy and we like to use it, but love is better if you don't refuse it. It's a treasure and you'll never lose it unless you lock up your door. Oh, love is something if you give it away. Give it away, give it away. Love is something if you give it away, you end up having more. So let's go dance until the break of day. If there's a piper, we will pay. 'Cause love is something if you give it away, you end up having more. Here's your last chance. Love is something if you give it away. Give it away, give it away. Love is something if you give it away, you end up having more. And at this time of year, as Jack has said, one of the ways we give away our love is through our financial resources as best we can. Magic pennies abound. Important part of our community, and Jack alluded to this, is how we tend to one another in times of challenge or happiness, sadness, in all times. And we name specifically each Sunday some of the challenges that people are going through, some of the joys that people are experiencing through our sharing of joys and sorrows and concerns. If you do have something you'd like to share, I invite you to enter it into chat, and we will read those as we go along. There have been none sent to me, so I will await and look at chat to see. We will wait. If there's a joy or sorrow or concern you'd like to share, please type it into chat.
Ken, there is one from Lorraine Riggs.
I didn't see. Go ahead. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Go ahead, David.
Okay. So she asked for a candle of sorrow for her 66-year-old neighbor who died of COVID on December 28th. Deep sympathy to his wife and extended family in Hull.
We light that candle for your neighbor, Lorraine. I will defer to you, Daveline, if anyone else has entered anything.
From Diane Elliott to everyone, a candle of thanks for Elizabeth Torrey and the sweet treats she leaves at our door for her mother, Ann. For Diane's mother, Ann.
Candle of thanks, which is a kind of joy, of course. Thank you.
And from Rick Matilla and Sharon Kren, ironically, a candle of concern and hope for all those in Colorado who lost their homes in the tragic fire. I think the irony is because Sharon's family home was lost last year in the fire or year before. And from Nina Welford, a candle of concern and support also for all those families near Boulder, Colorado, who have lost pets and homes in the horrific fire.
These candles for all that suffering in the fire and now in the cold and snow, which makes the recovery all the worse.
And from Bonnie, joyful to spend time with family during the holidays. A candle of joy.
Candle of joy for any family time, in person if you've been able to, and on Zoom, which is also good. Anyone else?
And from Pat Bianco, a candle for Tom Zarl, who I think that's how you say it, who is in the Plymouth Hospital for tests. We miss his presence at Linden Ponds.
Candle for Tom Zarl, who's an active participant also in our Bodhisattva group. We wish him well.
And from Jack Gomez, a candle of sorrow for the death of his brother Pete following an illness, but also a candle of joy for his life.
Candle of sorrow for Jack's brother, the loss of Jack's brother Pete, and candle of joy for the life, all the gifts. Memorial service, as most of you know, will be this Friday here in the Meeting House and on Zoom at 11 o'clock Friday morning. We hold all of Jack's family, Pete's family, in our hearts.
And a candle from Marianne Fry, a candle of appreciation for the life of Diane Gibson, the late mother of a dear friend.
For Marianne Fry, a candle, the late mother of a dear friend. Candle burns.
And that's it in the chat.
These candles burn as well for any joys, sorrows, or concerns deeply felt in our hearts this morning, even though they've remained unexpressed in words. Christopher, are we able to share now?
Yes, we should be good.
The anthem, I guess. There has to be a song Chris Marr will be singing.
There are too many dark nights, too many troublesome days, too many wearisome miles. There has to be a song. There has to be a song to make our burdens bearable. There has to be a song to make our hopes believable, to transform our triumphs into praise. There has to be a song. Somewhere down deep in a forgotten corner of each man's heart, to release the chains of past defeats. There has to be a song, like a cool, clear drink of water, like the gentle
Amen. Thank you, Christopher. We're invited now to a time of meditation, prayer, and silence. As this new year begins, may we pause at the turning of the year to center ourselves, to recenter, reground ourselves in all that matters most, truly matters most. Love, truth, the value of each person, each life, justice, freedom, peace. To center in our hearts, guided by our minds, as we resolve to keep on together, for we always have each other, with hope. All as we pray, the words of our hearts, yearnings of our hearts, for the health and safety of our dearest ones, of everyone, as we continue our journey through the pandemic that feels without end. As we pray for those who grieve, for those who are hungry, for those who are lonely, for those caught in the crossfire of war and violence and climate catastrophe. As we pray that the prayers of our hearts might become the work of our hands to meet the challenges before us, from personal to planet-wide, to bring to each encounter joy, kindness, love, compassion, to grow love. And we enter a time of renewing silent meditation and prayer. Nice, we were in the same key. We hadn't talked about that. Thank you, Christopher. Our readings this morning. We have two readers and two readings. Rich Elliott will offer the first. Thanks, Rich.
Good morning. Our first reading is from chapter 3 of the Hindu holy book, Bhagavad-Gita, first from verse 25. Though the unwise cling to their actions, watching for results, the wise are free of attachments and act for the well-being of the whole world. and verse 35. It is better to do your own duty badly than to perfectly do another's. You are safe from harm when you do what you should be doing. Here ends the reading.
Thank you, Rich. Our second reading from Trish McClear-Baines. Trish, thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Our second reading is from The Great Work of Your Life, a guide for the journey of your true calling by Stephen Cope. Each of us must have one domain, one small place on the globe where we can truly meet life, where we can meet it with every gift we have. One small place where, through testing ourselves, we can know the nature of life and ultimately know ourselves. This domain, this one place that is uniquely ours, is our work in the world, the one place where we really have the opportunity to wake up. Here ends the reading.
And thank you, Trish. Thank you both. Our morning offering will now be invited, and we, of course, can make our offering at any time through our website. If you go to the home page, oldshipchurch.org, you'll find a donate link along the right side, and there's a pull-down menu, and there you can give to the Sunday plate offering. I think the Christmas Eve offering is still open, and also the special plate offering for January, which is to Renewal House, the program, a shelter program from the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry in Boston. So we thank you in advance for your gifts, your generosity, in whatever way you want to share them and however much you're able to give. Our morning offering will now be invited as we listen to My Life Flows On from Rich Jensen.
My life flows on in endless song, above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep singing? Would though the tempest round me roars, I know the truth, it liveth. Though the darkness round me close, songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inward calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? My life flows on in endless song.
The many voices of Rich Jensen. Thank you, Rich. Just a beautiful rendition of that old Quaker hymn, My Life Flows On. My sermon this morning I've titled The Truth of the Matter, Life That Is. Aren't you curious? I know I am. The truth of the matter, life that is. I want to begin this morning by sharing a story I shared a number of years ago. It's a story told by the American spiritual teacher Ram Dass, who was originally Richard Alpert, a Harvard professor, after a kind of awakening of his own. He became Ram Dass. The story, as he shared it, had to do with a 1970 encounter that he had on the New York State Thruway with a state trooper on the Thruway. So Ram Dass was driving what he described as a 1938 Buick limousine converted into a camper. It was, he said, a car that necessitated his driving slowly. So get that picture in your mind. Driving on the New York Thruway with this jury-rigged car. Well, as he drove, he tells us, or told us, he of blessed memory, told us he was chanting to Krishna, one of the Hindu manifestations of God, as you know, and he was steering with one hand and counting his mala prayer beads with the other hand, just going along. Here's what he said about that. He said, I was ecstatically hanging out with blue Krishna. Krishna is often portrayed as in a blue color. I was ecstatically hanging out with blue Krishna and driving along the New York Thruway when I noticed a blue flashing light in my rear view mirror. It wasn't Krishna, of course, apparently not anyway. It was a state trooper. So then came the stop and the tight-lipped request for license and registration. But through all of this, Ram Dass wrote that he was looking at him, at the trooper, was looking at him as Krishna. Wouldn't Krishna come as a state trooper? After all, Jesus, he said, was a carpenter. Well, in that spirit, then Ram Dass wrote that he would have given the state trooper anything, flowers, love, his very life. Well, the trooper spent some time back at his car. That's a routine. Of course, none of you know about how that works when you've been stopped on the road. I was once stopped for going just a little too fast. I was on my way to a meditation retreat. There's irony for you. Anyway, the trooper spent some time back at his car, as troopers do, and then returned. And then he asked Ram Dass what was on the passenger seat, a little box. Ram Dass said, "Oh, those are mints. Would you like one?" Well, then the trooper told Ram Dass he was driving too slowly, and if he was going to drive that slowly, he had to do so off the thruway. "Yes, absolutely," replied Ram Dass, who then commented to us, his readers, "I was just looking at him with such love." Ram Dass goes on with his telling of the story, so I'll read his words. "If you put yourself in the role of a state trooper, how often do you suppose they get looked at with unconditional love, especially when they're in uniform? So after he had finished all the deliberations, he didn't want to leave, but he had run out of state trooperness. So he stood there for a minute, and then he said, 'Great car you've got here.' Well, that allowed me, Ram Dass, to get out. So they admired the car for a while together, kicked the tires and so on. Then Ram Dass goes on. Then we ran out of that. I could feel he still didn't want to leave. I mean, why would you want to leave when you're being unconditionally loved? So finally, he ran out of digressions. He knew he'd have to come clean, that he's Krishna. So he said, 'Be gone with you,' which wasn't state trooper talk. But what the hell, Ram Dass writes. Well, as I got into the car and started to drive away, he was standing by his cruiser. I looked in the mirror and saw that he was waving at me. Tell me, was that a state trooper?" He concludes, "or was that Krishna?" Well, it was 1970, flower power, beads, love and peace and so on, but that's not really the point. Better to ask how Ram Dass would want us to understand the story today, all these years, decades really hence. To put it directly, what might it mean to say that the trooper was, in some real sense, actually Krishna? Maybe the answer is simple, at least on the surface, as simple as the question that each of us is Krishna. Each of us. And usually, maybe always, we do not own up to it, not even to ourselves. Or we can put it all another way, a little more secular way perhaps. Something in that encounter loosened up the trooper's usual way of experiencing himself, identifying himself as a trooper. Maybe Ram Dass's friendliness and his lack of defensiveness metaphorically disarmed the trooper, so that he could, for a few minutes, step out of that identity as trooper and be just another human being. Something like this happens to, I expect all of us, say if we're hanging out with friends, putting aside our other workaday roles, our other family roles, whatever, we're just with each other and putting aside those identities. In any case, who do we think we really are? Are we just, or is there might be some sort of underlying identity beneath, if you will, our outward roles in our families, in our work, and so on, the way others identify us, the way I identify ourselves? Or are we just a shifting melange of sometimes conflicting identities and roles? Questions. Well, let's go back something over 2,000 years to that Hindu text, the Bhagavad-Gita, we heard from earlier. It's often thought to be the heart and soul of Hinduism, a text which has been the inspiration for millions over the centuries, including Mahatma Gandhi. It was his guidebook, his handbook, if you will, for all that he did. The Gita takes place, it's actually part of a huge epic, as some of you know, the Mahabharata, and it's inserted kind of in the midst. And it's in a context, the Gita is at least as unlikely as the New York State Thruway. It's a battlefield before a great battle between forces of good and evil, to put it way too simply. The warrior, Arjuna, is having second thoughts about this battle. Great warrior, second thoughts. He has family members on both sides. Sure, it's portrayed as good on one side, evil on the other, but he has family on both sides, teachers, aunts, uncles, cousins, and so on. How can he fight? He's tormented by doubt, and he puts his weapons aside. Well, for Arjuna, Krishna appeared not as a state trooper, but fortuitously as his charioteer, chariot driver. And Krishna takes the opportunity to instruct Arjuna, and through that instruction, of course, the rest of us, to teach him who he truly is and how he should live. In my own words, and put, I expect, far too simply, but maybe not too simply, Arjuna, like all of us, maybe like all of us, is an individual manifestation of, choose your word, of the divine, of God, of cosmos, of the whole. You know, the universe grows people the way an apple tree grows apples. Each apple individual, but clearly part of the whole. To use a Sanskrit language, within each of us is Atman, our true deepest self, which is at one with Brahman, the universal self, what Emerson called the oversoul. Well, if that's the case, then how should we live? If this is who we are? Well, there are 18 chapters in the Gita. They're not long, but 18 chapters. But at the heart of the several paths in answer to this most important question, how shall we live, is this, at least this. As we heard in that first reading, one of the paths to liberation, and they're all interwoven, from liberation from a sort of unhappy imprisonment in the feeling of being only an individual locked up in our skin and bones and roles and identities, utterly separate from others. Liberation from this, from this feeling that there's nothing larger, that we're not part of something larger than our own skin and bones, is the path of karma yoga. Karma simply means action. The path of action. It's the path of selfless service without attachment to the results. Let it go. To the fruits, as it's often put. No attachment to the fruits. Yes, of course, have a goal. Gandhi had goals. We all have goals. But let go of attachment to things having to go exactly your way. Or let go of attachment to thinking that your success or failure as a human being is dependent on how it goes, this way or that way. Do what you can in service to others with love, of course, maybe unconditional love, like Ram Dass for that trooper, and then let go of the results, the fruits. And all you have to do, is to be yourself. To be yourself in this way of living. And that leads us to another Sanskrit word, Dharma. many translations and understandings of the word Dharma. In the largest sense, it's the way things are, how the world works. And Buddhism is the teaching, the Dharma, of how things work. There's also our individual Dharma, Svat Dharma, our individual way of being in the world. We heard about that in both readings, and certainly in the Stephen Cope reading this morning. The Dharma of who we are and what we can do, how we can serve through the uniqueness of who we are. It's not that we're not state troopers and teachers and carpenters and teachers and preachers and so on, parents, siblings, children, but that's not the essence of who we are. But it is through those unique roles, unique manifestations, that we can serve to help and heal. Now, I first read the Bhagavad-Gita in college in a kind of academic translation, but it grabbed me, and I've returned to it over all the years, over the decades since, acquiring different translations along the way, offering different angles of vision, different commentaries, and so forth. Why do I return to it over and over again? There are reminders in this ancient text that I need. That's what I find. That's why I'm leading another class on the Gita. I need the reminders, and perhaps some others do as well. Among other things, I need to be reminded of that central teaching over and again. Act without attachment to the fruits of your action. Do what you can, where you are, with what you've got, and with who you are, then let go. It's so easy, too easy, to think that we can control the outcome, and that, as I said a few moments ago, and that the outcome of our actions, that determines our success or failure as human beings. It's too easy to do that. So I don't know about you, I need the reminder, and it turns out it makes it easier to live when you realize that all you can do in serving life is to do your best. My mother used to say that, just do your best. To do your best with whatever limited knowledge and ability and unique qualities you've got, and then let go, because we are each part of larger realities. There's even just to put it sort of basically, there are 7.9 billion people on the planet now. We're part of this. Not to mention the family of all the other species. We each have some role to play. Further importantly, the instruction is to do, I kind of glossed over this, is to do whatever we do with love, that unconditional love that Ram Dass talked about. That's the path of bhakti, devotion. We begin what comes so naturally, love for a dear one, a friend, love for our church. Jack was talking about that. Love for our nation and its values, love for the earth, love for life. Love. The Gita talks about, of course, love for Krishna, for God, this path of bhakti, devotion. For me, as far as I can get in that kind of language, is to see and love the spark of God, that of God, of love in you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and every person. As Walt Whitman put it, you've heard these words before, why should I wish to see God better than this day? I see something of God each hour of the 24 and each moment then. In the faces of men and women, I see God, and in my own face in the glass. Well, finally then, for this morning, I wouldn't spend much time talking about a text like the Bhagavad-Gita or the Tao Te Ching or the Buddhist Dhammapada or the Gospels if I didn't think it made some sort of difference for me, for others, for life, if I didn't have a sort of faith that the more of us who live according to the wisdom in these ancient texts, the more of us who live according to these texts of wisdom and the guidance offered, the more of us who live accordingly, the more likely are we to discover a flourishing of our own lives and the flourishing of all life that we create together. This, anyway, is my trust and hope. But really, finally, one more thought to return to Ram Dass's story. Might it be that we can do no better than to look at one another and behave towards one another with that unconditional love that Ram Dass had for the trooper? Now, let's be real. That's easier when you're standing in front of some people than when you're standing in front of some other people. We live in complex lives, and some people, sometimes us, don't behave so well. How do we muster that unconditional love? Even so, I think we could do no worse to muster that unconditional love as if each was Krishna, God, manifestation of love. Use your own language. After all, this might be where genuinely happier lives for those who offer that love, for those who receive it, and for all of us together, lives that flourish might begin. And again, though I'm not sure what it means to love God, to love Krishna, maybe it's just this. I know what it means to love my neighbor, you, and you, and you. And I expect that's enough, and more than enough. This new year, when we really need that love more than ever and always, may it be so. I'm going to extinguish these flames as we do each Sunday. And as we say each Sunday, I cannot extinguish the love with which they were lit. The love one for another, the larger love, that love we carry with us wherever we go. And when I extinguish the flame of the central flame of the chalice of our faith, I am not extinguishing the faith, just the representation. Now, this morning, the faith goes with us. May we carry it wherever we go. Our closing hymn is in our soft-covered hymn book, if you've got one. It's number 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. Christopher is going to lead us in this one, and if we remain muted, we can sing right along. When Our Heart is in a Holy Place, number 10008.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell a story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and a God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power of each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in
Thank you, Christopher. May our hearts all find that holy place. A reminder that when this service ends, after the postlude, we will maintain the Zoom link for anyone who wants to see and talk with one another for a while. These words with which we often end, echoing across, a century and a half and more, from the abolitionist Unitarian preacher Theodore Parker. Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere, its temple all space, its shrine the good heart, its creed all truth, its ritual works of love, its profession of faith, divine living. May it be so as we turn from this time together to bless the world with our lives. Amen, and blessed be.